My name's Terry Lynch. I'm with Oregon Ufology. I found myself searching for a passageway one day. And that passageway leads right across the complete section of the Cascades, which I'm sitting in front of at the moment. On top of the line of peak. I want to make sure that everybody sees the type of things that we find in the process of research for ufology. I have located a couple that's sitting here on the top of the line of peak. She's facing south. He's facing north.
The Middle, Cascadia Guides, LEDZ Production, in conjunction with Alien Strand Films.
Two types that I see. One type is about 3 feet tall, very dark, very ugly, not humanoid at all. The others are very, very tall, very lizard-looking, not pleasant.
The creatures that I have seen mostly have been the grays.
And when I say tall, I'm not talking 6 feet. I'm talking very tall, like 10 feet tall.
Usually about 3 to 4 foot tall, real big almond-shaped black eyes.
The face was oval. The being itself couldn't have been more than 3 feet tall. It was sitting cross-legged at the top left-hand corner of my bed.
Part of me telling this to the world to prove what happened to me and the removal of the object, and is it emitting radio frequency? It has to be an alien impact.
I remember as a child at night, I had just gone to bed. My mother just put me to bed, and I could see the lights on in the living room. I just laid down for bed. I could hear my parents, I could hear the television, and I looked up, and to my right I saw a couple, very shadowy, very dark, in my bedroom. A man and a woman, and they started walking towards me. It was very frightening. I couldn't speak. I wanted to call out to my mother. I couldn't call out to her. I was just terrified. And right about that time, she walked into the room, and it appeared that she walked directly through the two people that were standing.
Alien Strand Podcast.
Executives, Coastal Bend, and Corpus Christi, Texas. And you're listening to the Alien Strand Podcast with Donald Ledesma. Buying or selling, visit me at kellygreenrealtor.com or visit me on my Facebook page, Kelly Green Realtor. See you there.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Alien Strand Podcast. I'm your host, Donald Ledesma, and welcome to today's show. Right on. It's going to be a nice podcast today. I'm glad you guys are sticking around and joining us again. I know we fell behind just a little bit, but we're starting to catch right back up, because I feel that you guys love the stories and you want to get some more information, right? And that's what Alien Strand Podcast is about. I mean, you can catch us on 26, 27 platforms, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Google, Castbox, Deezer, we're Podbean, we're everywhere. So if you type up, Alien Strand or Alien Strand Podcast anywhere, it's pretty much going to pop out. You can even ask Alexa. Yeah, she'll even play some Alien Strand for you if you want it. Throw it on your favorites list. On all these podcasts, if you enjoy one of these podcasts, please give us a thumbs up or a little heart there. And that way we know that we're doing a pretty good job out there for you guys. We work hard and try to get you the best content that we can, and just to try to get, as much information out there and the stories out to you guys, because those things are important. A lot of people do like important stories, right? You can catch us on Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere else. You can catch us all over the place. So, if you want to follow us on Instagram, we're there. Type up Alien Strand, you'll find us there. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. Facebook, we throw out stuff every day, because we're trying to get out all the information as we can as they come in. So there's a lot of videos, a lot of information, sometimes even ancient relics or things from the historical past, come out to that people find. We throw those out there as well, because history is a very, very important part of who we are and who we are as a society as well, and who they were, because there was civilizations living before us, before we even knew who the heck they were, long ago. You got to remember, we just barely started getting our technology here in this possibly 100, 150 years, that we've been going and our technology has been growing. But what's been happening before that? You see, that's the aha moment, where you have to sit there and just kind of think about that just for a minute. But, like I said, thank you guys for sticking around today. We try to get out as much information as possible. You can follow us everywhere you can. You can leave comments. Please share. Don't forget, we have our documentary called The Middle. So if you can, go check that out on Amazon Prime. That doesn't have no commercials. It's only like $2.99, man. You go buy it. Right now it's on 3 countries, I believe. You can go check it out. There's other platforms that you can watch it on. I believe you can watch it on Apple TV as well. So if you got Apple TV, it'll give you the platform that you are on, and you'll be able to watch it. Just type up The Middle, Cascadia Guides. You'll be able to see our documentary there on Mr. Terry Lynch. There was a lot of people involved in that documentary, that sometimes we don't give too much credit to, all these people that were on there, they just, Chris Hamill, Anibal Caballero, Shauna Gilmer, Jody Gordon, Arizona Gallegos, he was on there. A lot of people are on there, telling their stories and showing their footage. Please watch that documentary. Give us a thumbs up on that as well. Today's podcast, I wanted to reflect back just a little bit on the understanding of what happens to folks during abductions, or what they think there are abductions as well. But don't forget to catch the podcast before this one on Antarctica. Okay, that was a great podcast. Had a lot of information before this one, which is number 88. So today is number 89, and I call it Alien Abductions. And this is almost like one of my other podcasts that I was able to give you a lot of information on that. So today I'm going to touch a lot of base on the podcast on what happens to folks during an abduction or the post-traumatic stress disorder that they go through, because believe it or not, these poor folks, they go through so much, when things like that happen to them, and they can't help it, they can't help what happened, The thing is trying to get people to believe what happened to you, because, most reality, a lot of folks, you try to explain these things to, they look at you like you're crazy, right? And I always talk about these things, like, why should folks look at you like that when you're trying to speak the truth? And then a lot of these folks hold it in, and they don't get to express themselves and get their information out, as like they want to, because, in reality, if you see a UFO in the sky, close proximity to you, or even if you see it and it's not from us, you're supposed to report that right away. Why? because we need the data. We need to know exactly where it was at, what time it was, what does the shape of the saucer look like, because you never know that if somewhere down the road or maybe 100 miles away somebody got abducted and they saw this same exact craft, but now they can't tie it together because nobody reported it, right? So you have to remember these things. It's an investigation, right? Just like if a crime was to take place, right? What we do as human beings down here, we there's somebody that saw it, or you got a camera, they report it, right? We expect that as ufologists to do the same thing, right? So we want you to report these things as you see them. Sometimes people think, it wasn't that important, but actually it might just be. All right. So there's a lot of UFO places out there where you can, websites, you can go out there and just submit your information. Even go to your Facebook groups or any group that you're on. These groups will actually, you can actually tell your story there. A lot of them will actually report it for you, because alien abductions are not nice, and they're not, sometimes they're not nice at all. And it's a very serious conversation, because people in the doctrine field, let's just say, psychiatrists, therapists, things like that, they're going to a lot of them will knock it off right away, because they're going to think that there's something psychologically wrong with you. You have a chemical imbalance. They're going to try to find all kinds of aspects around what you just told them. They're going to think you had sleep, you didn't have enough sleep, and which caused a lot of these things to happen or occur to you, what you thought you saw, right? But a lot of people, they do go through very traumatic stress, because not only do they get abducted, they feel everything. Some of them are wide awake when it happens. They don't even get to go under. They make them forget, right? 90% of these abductions, these extraterrestrial beings, will zap your brain in a sense, like a reset button, and you won't even know what happened to you, but it'll start coming back to you little by little, right? And I've explained this a lot to folks on my past podcasts. I've done it because I want you guys to understand that these folks that they go through this, they get regression therapy, and a lot of times it's best to wait sometimes, because your memories will start coming back to you little by little if you believe that something happened to you in a sense of an abduction, right? So what is an alien abduction? People call it abduction phenomenon, abduction syndrome, or a UFO abduction. So it's a phenomenon, right? The people reporting the experience of being kidnapped and subjected to physical, psychological experimentation by aliens or an alien figure. So people that are claiming to be having this abduction are called abductees or experiencers. I think now today's terminology, we're starting to use the word experiencers more than ever. That's just what I'm calling it now, because the folks that I've been dealing with lately have more of a sense of what's happening, and I see that more of an experiencer than an abductee, to where they don't remember anything, right? Most scientists and mental health professionals, explain these experiences by factors. Some of them call it false memory syndrome, right? Sleep paralysis. We've talked about this before. Deception. They think you're a psychopath in a sense. Some doctors have seen the similarities of what people are in a mental health state, and they've seen it. They've kind of compared it to alien abductees in a sense. So they're trying to kind of put these two things together back in the day, They're trying to figure out, okay, are these people kind of like psychopath and they're just kind of making up stories in their mind, or is this thing really happening to these folks? You know, a lot of the claims of the folks that have been abducted, you know, they say that they go through medical examinations of some sort, you know, and they always checking their reproductive system, their body parts, right? Why do they do this, right? If you're being abducted by an extraterrestrial race. A lot of them, you know, abductees, they claim that these extraterrestrials will tell them, you know, they're warning them about your environmental abuses, you know, nuclear stuff, you know, especially nuclear weapons. They're always talking about that, you know. And they have had engaged in interspecies breeding. It means that they have inbred themselves with human beings. In which what we call today, right? Clones. So a lot of these unidentified flying objects, UFOs, UAPs, abductees, they always say that it's some kind of a mind control that's happening to them when these things are happening to them. You know, and these just don't happen in the United States. It happens all over the world. So these folks have been reporting this since 1953. But folks didn't really know about it until, 1961, the Betty and Barney Hill abduction, right? I mean, those two got abducted, experimented on. Barney had post-traumatic stress from it. Betty, not so much. They had marks on their bodies, getting sick. And then a lot of folks thought these folks were insane, that they were just making up stories so they can get rich. And that wasn't even the case. They just wanted to tell their story. And later they ended up making a movie about it, right? There was a lot of reporting back in the days because folks were starting to experience things that they've never experienced before or they have never noticed before, right? Of being abducted. And how they were being burned, in a sense, marked. There's even a story in November 27th, 1896. In Stockton, California, there was a colonel named Shaw. He says him and a friend were harassed by 3 tall humanoids whose body were covered with fine, downy hair. He said they tried to kidnap them, right? This was in 1896. So these things have been happening since even before that. Some small reports, of course, that folks did not believe or didn't understand, so they didn't really make a big deal out of it. They just thought that these folks were making stories, right? But there's a lot of history behind alien abductions, right? Antonio Villas Boas, that was the one I spoke about before in Brazil in 1957, where he got abducted while he was on his tractor. He was taken. They did tests on him as well. And then he ended up performing a sexual encounter with a female alien, in which he said that she pointed at her belly, talking to him telepathically, saying that she was going to raise their baby in space. This was in 1957, mind you. And this man became an attorney after a while, which this what gave him merit. I remember telling this story to you guys. He lived a full life, though. He didn't die early because of radiation sickness or anything like that, but he still suffered the trauma that came with it of getting forced into something that you're not wanting to do. In other words, going into that ship. He was trying to get away. He didn't know any of that was going to happen. You know, there's just so many stories out there that people do get post-traumatic stress from it. You know, and that's the part that to where when they get these things, that they don't want to tell their stories because they not only they're having post-traumatic stress, but they're afraid of being ridiculed on top of that, right? You know, there was an actual study on post-traumatic stress from folks dealing with this, right? So what they did was they got 19 individuals who reported of having alien abductions, and they compared it to a group of 32 who were employed a battery test of measuring post-traumatic stress disorder with everyone, right? So they had to, just to see what's the difference between somebody that had post-traumatic stress on an alien abduction and the post-traumatic stress on a regular human basis without having to have the abduction, right? So the abductee group showed higher scores in measures of post-traumatic stress than somebody else that didn't go through that kind of trauma, but they still had some sort of post-traumatic stress, right? So there's a difference. There's a big difference between, you know, when you go through these things that it affects you, it affects your mind, it affects your body, and then you have these night sweats where you can't comprehend anything that's going on around you when you go through one of these abductions. You know, they always say sleep paralysis is one of them that where a lot of people go through this sleep paralysis. You know, a lot of folks, when they say you're very tired, you've had long days, you haven't slept very well, you end up having this sleep paralysis in your sleep to where you kind of wake up right before REM sleep. You're waking up right in the middle of it, and you're still inside a REM sleep, right? Rapid eye movement is REM. So once you're in rapid eye movement, you're in this 45-minute of deep sleep. A lot of times your body or your mind will wake up during this session that you have daily, and you'll feel like something's holding you down. Your eyes are open, you're stiff, you can't move, you see aliens or things that look like aliens to some folks. A lot of doctors, scientists call them, you know, false memories. Because of they know they're stressed out, being tired. You know, many people that were reported, you know, having abduction experiences, you know, they always say that they're undergoing some kind of surgery they're kind of like an altered state of consciousness, right? They see like colored figures, medical equipment, a round bright object, their nakedness, pain, and loss of control, right? And this is what a lot of folks do experience as an actual abduction as well. You know, they scientists always say, look, sometimes the tectonic plates, can result in electronic magnetic fields, and it affects your temporal lobe, which causes, hallucinations, a sense of another presence, right? So they're always trying to find ways to doubt of something that actually happened to someone, in a sense. So what I'm breaking down to you right now is which is a scientific world of the explanation of an abduction of people that are going through post-traumatic stress, in a sense. What about the folks that have gone through this and somebody else is there next to them? This is my question. And who's watching it? Because this does happen, to where there's a group of folks, maybe a family, and then they'll ask the younger daughter, and she'll say, yes, this happened. How do you explain that to these scientists, right? This is the part that these scientists need to say, hey, wait a minute, let's take a step back just for a second. And let's rethink this for this person and their story. Because you got to remember, this post-traumatic stress lives with somebody for a long time, and it takes a long time for you to get over this. And that's the hard part about it, that somebody who's actually had an alien abduction and has been witnessed by someone else having this alien abduction, sometimes only one person will get the post-traumatic stress and the other one won't. A lot of times the other human being will say, you know what, I don't want no part of this. They'll just wipe it out of their memory themselves. So there are categories into an alien abduction. There are actual categories. This was made by a medical consultant, by MUFON, back in the day. So they called Category 1 the injuries of a temporary nature dealing with paralysis, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, headache, tingling sensations, electrical shocks, feeling of heat, temporary blindness, mild burns, perception of odors, and perception of sounds. That's Category 1. Category 2, those dealing with more chronic effects, usually associated with skin lesions, which may represent pathology through unknown mechanisms. Lesions may appear as severe burns, scarring, open sores, or etc. This person can have effects of radiation exposure and may result in the development of cancers, anemia of the sort. There's a Category 3, those involving female abductees, and the missing fetus syndrome of those involving implants. And then there's a category 4, those involving psychological or paranormal evidence as noted by the witness. So category 4 is something that a lot of folks don't talk about, right? Especially in a part of a CE3 or even that's being in close proximity to a craft, to a UFO, or to the actual pilot, the extraterrestrial. And usually after witnessing a UFO, UAP, in close proximity, later would usually experience some kind of paranormal evidence. In other words, things moving around in the house, shadow figures, doors opening, things shaking off the table. It almost seems like there's a ghost in the house. So a lot of these things that happen to folks, especially dealing with something that has been traumatic and some that hasn't been traumatic. A lot of these things affect people's normal way of life. In other words, your weight. You get vital signs of blood pressure rates up and down. You get blood forming in functions, in other words, in little spots around your body. You get skin lesions, hair loss, fingernail shedding. To me, doesn't that sound like radiation or some kind of radioactive burn of being in close proximity to one of these crafts? Not just the abduction part of it, but the physical part that takes place afterwards. To even folks that don't even go in the craft, they just experience this craft at a close proximity to where they can almost touch it, and they get sick the way they do. We talk about the Landrum and Cache incident, right? Betty, she had headaches. They became worse. She had nausea. Her skin was burning red. Her neck swelled up. She started getting blotches on her face. Her health deteriorated for 4 days. Her eyes swole shut. She had blisters containing fluid. She was weak, diarrhea. She was unable to eat or drink. Even years after, she developed several types of cancer, right? And these are the effects that folks deal with, like I said earlier. Even after, you get a sense of a presence. You get these dark, shadowy figures. Sometimes you'll even have like a floating sensation, in a sense. And then you'll have to uncover repressed memories, right, of what actually happened to you. So what do you do in a situation like this, right? How do you deal and how do you cope? After you go into a doctor, them telling you, no, you might be crazy. Or no, you didn't have enough sleep. No, you're too exhausted. Or even when you go to someone else who believes you and says, you know what, I believe you were abducted by extraterrestrials. What do you do then? You're still dealing with the post-traumatic stress of it. You're still dealing with daily visitations while this other person's asleep at home, which you talk to. You're at home getting tortured and visited daily at times by something that you can't understand what is happening to you, right? How do you get out of something like this? Do you ever get out of something like this? That's something that, as human beings, we have to learn to suppress, in a sense, if nobody believes you. But in our case, with Alien Strand or with anybody, we try to help you, right? In some sense, way, shape, or form. Something's happening to these folks to where they're not supposed to, go through these things. A lot of folks will tell stories of they had great encounters. It was a nice encounter with an extraterrestrial, right? They got in their ship, they took them to another planet, or they just took them above the earth, had a nice encounter, came back, we're all peachy, right? No trauma, no nothing like that. I'd say out of all these stories that I've ever done in the past, about 80% are traumatic in a sense, to where they, even if they weren't up close and personal with an extraterrestrial or talking with one or anything like that, or they were just close to the ship, they still got the after effects, right? So what I did was I went to, the National Archives, and I said, how long has this stuff been going on for? There's a lot of declassified information in there now that you didn't see back in the day. There was a story, and I'm reading one of these declassified stories from the 1990s, I believe, that they declassified. And they did a test on acute and subacute field effects on human biological tissues during an event, right? So if a craft went over somebody there or anything like that, they were trying to figure out, okay, what exactly happens to these people, because they wanted to see if people were telling the truth, right? Or what was happening. So this document got unclassified. So they did a test which said, well, they studied, actually. It says there was 3 previous fit and active individuals experienced an anomalous, inconsistent with their domain, right? It was an aerospace-related event. So within 72 hours, they suffered medical signs of symptoms, which are acute and subacute effects, right? So me personally, I'm just kind of thinking when I'm reading this, okay, wait a minute. These dudes, either they have a craft and they kind of tested 3 guinea pigs. This is just me personally. So during the test, they said these almost immediately the arrhythmia of heat and redness over their exposed skin. They said it was presumed from the electromagnetic radiation. And the exposure gave them fever, pain, headaches, numbness. Malaise, diarrhea, loss of hair, skin eruptions, boils, cardiac palpitations. Then they started getting chronic headaches. And they were all having symptoms of insomnia, sleep and dream disturbances, moderate and occasional severe anxiety and insomnia. Two of the 3 experienced photophobia, which is extreme sensitivity to light. They had dry, scratchy eyes. In which they were extremely bloodshot in the whites of their eyes. They had swelling in their eyelids. One of the 3 experienced moderate blood dysphagia. It was a sign of radiation illness. And over the years, they all developed signs of malignant transformations, right? So this is a study that they did on these 3 normal, healthy individuals. To me, we're guinea pigs, right? This is how I see it. These are the tests that they did on folks. Because they wanted to see the effects of the electronic magnetic radiation fields. They're called EMR. They wanted to see the biophysical characteristics of the injuries, and they wanted to understand them, right? So this is what they did, you know. They put them in a high energy propulsion systems, you know, because they even said themselves, those propulsion systems were not well understood. So they wanted to see what these effects had on a human body. Does this sound familiar to the folks out there that are experiencing these things when they come up close to an extraterrestrial vehicle, UFO, UAP, or abductions? So this is where you can now say, all right, these folks that have these injuries to their bodies are not full of crap. you can now link to what those folks went through to what this release of this unclassified document, to the guinea pigs that they used. We don't even know if these men are still alive or men or women. They just know that the EMR, which is the radiation, electronic magnetic radiation fields, did significant damage to the body. And it's unfortunate that we have to learn it this way later, right? They even did the hourly on it, which was the when the arrhythmia, and which was progressing to the second degree burn, said it was within 72 hours. They had that measured out. Headaches, temporal, lasting 3 weeks. Dizziness, vertigo, nausea, vomiting, lasting 24 to 72 hours. Severe anxiety or high exposure over 10 or greater 10 minutes, okay? They even saw lines on the fingernails. 30 to 60 day subacute persistent sleep disorder. They said a lot of this stuff lasted up to 3 years after they did these tests. Is this acceptable? Hell no, it's not. Now you see what I just did here for you. I was able to tell you what folks were going through from the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, what they were experiencing to 1990, where they were doing tests already. The similarities are uncanny. They're together. They're exactly the same. So now you know when somebody says they were abducted in close proximity, a lot of times they won't go through these burns or whatever, but they'll still experience paranormal kind of activity, right? And I talk about this a lot because a lot of the folks that are going to be in our next film, which is the middle, part 2, CE3, every single one of these folks have experienced something similar to what I just explained and read to you of what happens to folks during an alien abduction. And yes, they do have PTSD. And yes, doctors have told them they have thought that they were crazy. Yes, their lives had changed as well. And all these folks are willing to tell their stories. These are people, regular people like you and I, ready to tell their story and let you know exactly what happened to them and exactly what's happened to them today, because it's still happening. It still continues. A lot of these folks can live normal lives. They have to, right? Because if not, you, in a sense, you will kind of go crazy if you overthink this too much. But every single one of these stories and every detail that I told you today is data that's documented. Know that everything I told you today is real. And just hope that you don't get to experience these things in that darker sense. I always tell folks, be careful when you're out there. Don't go alone into the woods. Don't go alone looking for crafts by yourself. 98.9% of the folks that disappear are alone when they go do this. A lot of them don't come back. Don't be that person. If you want to look for them, be within a group of folks. Do it in an open area. Use your cameras. Use electronic magnetic field sensors that you can. You can even download them on your phone. Record the data. Help us put all this together so that way folks like myself and other podcasters and other folks in the news media or anybody out there is willing to tell you exactly what these folks experience on a daily basis, so you can learn and tell other folks the do's and the don'ts and the what ifs of extraterrestrials. A lot of them do have consequences. Now in this day of age, people have learned to accept ufology, extraterrestrials, UFOs, and everything out there that we just don't understand. Bigfoot. Everything of the unknown, paranormal. Us as a human society are starting to understand it and accept it more than before. And I hope we continue to embrace this and learn from other folks and get to hear their stories as they unfold. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast. I know I did. A lot of information there. A lot of information. You know, I hope you guys go out there and do some research yourselves. You know, go out to these groups, these podcast groups. There's also regular UFO groups out there, you know, the people that have been abducted. You know, there's abduction groups out there. You know, if you really want to learn ufology, you want to be a part of ufology, we do have a group out there called Alien Strand Disclosure Project. We will teach you how to be a ufologist. We will show you how to catch these crafts in the sky, how to document everything, how to hold all the data so that way we can share with everybody else. And then, once you're up to it, you will become a ufologist yourselves. Then behind your name, you can say your name and say Alien Strand Disclosure Project, because you are a part of that. I just want to thank everybody today for sticking around and listening to today's podcast. I thought it was very important. I hope you guys really enjoyed all the information that was there. You know, I was able to put out as much information as I could from the archives. You know, those are a lot of things that anybody can go and go check it out. You don't have to be part of the government. You can go and sign up, sign in, and just start looking around. Look around and you'll find some really important things. A lot of things that were covered up back in the day that don't need to be covered up anymore. Be sure to catch us on 25, 26 platforms: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Tumblr, Twitter. You know, give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to watch The Middle on Amazon Prime Video, free on Tubi TV with commercials. Give us a thumbs up there. Share it with everybody else. You know, tell everybody how good it is, because you know what? We had a great time putting that together. A lot of information in that film. I hope you guys really enjoyed it, especially if you're a studying ufologist or just getting into ufology. That's a great documentary to go watch of Mr. Terry Lynch. You know, he did an amazing job telling his story. Now we're working on part 2. Yeah. CE3. That will be coming out at the end of the year. So we're going to start pre-production on that. You know, we're just trying to get a little bit of capital and things going on, because these films are super expensive to make. Nothing's cheap anymore. You know that. Go look at your gas pump. I'm kidding. So anyway, you guys have yourselves a good day. Have yourselves a good evening. And have yourselves a good night.